The video opens with a jolt that immediately seizes the viewer's attention. A revelation that for months, the blue light scandal raged unchecked inside Mkhwanazi, while decisive action from the city's top leadership was conspicuously absent. The shock isn't just in the misconduct itself, but in the admission that the person expected to intervene, city manager Mashazi, did not act when the flashing lights, the abuse of authority, and the internal uproar demanded leadership. This unresolved contradiction between responsibility and silence sets the stage for a scandal that spirals beyond procedure and into the realm of political theater. A sharp tease follows almost immediately, promising viewers the full unraveling of how a deputy police chief operating with excessive force became the center of a controversy his own superior did not diffuse. The audience is told they will witness not only Mashazi's admission but the deeper political gravity surrounding it. Who influenced her? Who obstructed her? Who benefited from her delayed action? And what this failure reveals about the fractures within Mkhwanazi's governance. The tease hints at one especially explosive moment, the revelation of the internal warning she received, but did not act upon. The engagement spark arrives like a hand pulling the viewer deeper into the story. If you were in a position of authority and received a complaint about misconduct, what would you do first? Investigate quietly or act publicly? It becomes an emotional challenge, inviting viewers to judge the choices, the consequences, and the silence that fueled public outrage. They are urged to answer before the twists unfold. Then the main narrative begins its long, cinematic ascent. The viewer is pulled into the atmosphere of a city hall shaken by the blue light saga, an incident where flashing lights became symbols of unchecked power, where the residents' trust cracked, and where a deputy chief's behavior demanded firm administrative action. Yet the action didn't come. The video explores the first emotional puzzle. Why did Mashazi, known for her administrative discipline, neglect to intervene? The story explores the early warning signs, the memos that circulated, and the growing frustration within EMPD ranks as the misconduct escalated. As the story deepens, a surprising insight emerges. Certain internal reports reveal that while misconduct complaints were logged, there were delays in forwarding them to the disciplinary directorate, creating the first serious inconsistency in the timeline. Another set of documents, however, suggests the delays did not originate in her office. This duality casts the entire saga into a fog of suspicion. The narrative leans into the tension, showing how confusing timelines and contradictory testimonies force the public to question whether this failure to act was administrative negligence or the result of political influence. The outline then adopts a cinematic storytelling tone. Viewers are taken into a vivid scenario, a tense council meeting where councilors demanded answers and Mashazi's silence became its own kind of confession. Emails sat unanswered. Reports stayed unprocessed. Meanwhile, the blue light incident grew into a citywide spectacle raising questions about accountability. This scenario leads to a reflective comparison with another case, an official from a different municipality who once froze a disciplinary process because political sponsors advised patience. The parallel creates a haunting echo and hints that Mashazi's silence may have had unseen pressures behind it. The narrative then shifts into a more analytical energy. The story explains how governance falters when leaders hesitate, especially in cases involving law enforcement and public perception. The saga becomes a cautionary tale of how delayed action can create political openings for adversaries, fuel public anger, and even be weaponized by opponents. The viewer senses the broader implication. A failure to act is not a small mistake, it's the first domino in a chain reaction. This leads into the exploration of motives. The video turns the critical question inward: who stood to gain from Mashazi's hesitation? The story follows whispers inside the administration, insiders recounting how certain files seemed to disappear, how instructions were redirected, and how disciplinary processes were pushed into strange holding patterns. The tension heightens with the reconstruction of the exact day the blue light complaint reached her desk, contrasted with the day action was finally attempted. The gap becomes the heart of the scandal. A personal account from a staff member who worked closely with Mashazi adds emotional depth. She is described as a meticulous administrator, someone who rarely missed deadlines, making her failure in this situation even more perplexing. The contrast between her usual discipline and her inaction becomes a mystery the video must unpack. At the midpoint of the story, right when the emotional weight peaks, the mid-video call to action arrives. Viewers are energized with the promise that the second half will expose hidden power dynamics, reveal the moment Mashazi finally breaks her silence, and explore the political networks surrounding the blue light saga. The CTA becomes a dramatic breath before the plunge. The second half of the narrative intensifies. The video dives deeper into how bureaucratic systems can enable delay. Rumors and misconceptions often travel faster than official documents, creating an administrative environment where perception outweighs procedure. The story introduces the possibility that Mashazi's failure may not have been entirely her own, hinting that higher-ranking figures may have shaped, stalled, or discouraged disciplinary steps. The tension spikes when a dual-fact revelation surfaces. Documentation proves certain delays happened under her watch, yet it also shows that key information was withheld from her for weeks. Two truths collide. One impact. Accountability becomes blurry. The outline then reveals a critical moment described by a whistleblower, an emergency meeting where influential voices allegedly discouraged firm disciplinary action until proper consultations were made. This revelation hints at political shielding that extended beyond Mashazi herself. A comparison to another national scandal underscores how common such administrative paralysis is in environments where political convenience outweighs public accountability. The narrative presses on with a breakdown of how reputational damage forms. A leader's delayed action becomes the perfect narrative weapon for political opponents, turning a procedural lapse into a headline-shaking scandal. The story questions whether Mashazi's later departure from the city was an admission of guilt or a quiet escape from a system determined to use her as a buffer. As the story approaches its final crescendo, internal timeline audits expose discrepancies, suggesting the city's disciplinary framework was manipulated in ways that placed responsibility disproportionately on her shoulders. This moment becomes one of the most dramatic turns in the entire video. Finally comes the long-awaited emotional core, Mashazi's own admission. Her voice, measured yet remorseful, acknowledges she failed to act swiftly. She explains the pressures, the confusion, the miscommunication, and the political clutter that clouded her decision-making. But she does not deflect. She accepts her role. She acknowledges the consequences. Her admission becomes the emotional hinge of the entire story, shifting public perception from outrage to understanding, even if the accountability remains. The second wind blocks then expand upon overlooked details, new contradictions, and unexpected insights. One segment reveals a small technical detail that, when seen clearly, reframes the entire timeline. Another introduces a senior official who contradicts earlier narratives, revealing that key instructions may have been stalled higher up the hierarchy. A final segment interprets what this means for future disciplinary procedures in local government, turning the scandal into a cautionary roadmap. The wrap-up gathers all these threads into a gripping, tension-filled closing statement, reminding viewers that the Blue Light Saga is not just a story about one failure. It's about the fragility of governance when leadership hesitates. The end-screen lead teases upcoming looks at related political dynamics and ongoing investigations, keeping viewers hungry for more.